Hi, I'm Anthony Dallmann-Jones. My students call me Dr. DJ, and so can you. These stories are true stories about education. I call them school stories. And they're things that actually happened in my tenure as a student, as a teacher, as an administrator. And I just want to share them with you, and hopefully they'll make a point. Mrs. King. I want to tell these stories from the viewpoint of a child. Students are real human beings. They're full-fledged human beings. They're not half human. And their world is very, very real to them. I don't know why this comes as a surprise to adults, but it does. And the fourth grade is a very special year. It's a year of rambunctiousness and energy and creativity, enthusiasm, vibrancy. If you live in a community and you get up on a Saturday morning early enough and you see these little figures flying down the street, either on foot or on their bicycles or skateboards, firing off to create a ball field or start a club or build a treehouse or something or other. Those are probably fourth graders, 9, 10, 11 years old, delightful age. It should be a wonderful school year, but it wasn't for me. Let me describe Mrs. King from a student perspective. She looked like she got up in the morning and did this and stuck her finger in an active electrical outlet. Her hair was like, and when she walked, it would kind of move around, these tendrils of hair. Later, I learned about Medusa and the snakes, and yeah. She's very hyper, very suspicious. I wonder now if she wasn't afraid of us. We were 10. So one day, a student who transferred in from Kentucky, his name was Cletus. He didn't have any shoes. Not saying people from Kentucky don't have shoes, but Cletus didn't have any shoes. And you got to remember, this was just after the war, the Second World War. Several kids didn't have shoes, and nobody thought anything about it. But anyway, he brought to school a hand grenade. It was terrific. Us guys were like, wow, can I hold it? You know, we're all pretending, like pulling the pin and, you know, maybe you know how little boys are. And it was just like real heavy and, you know, filled your whole hand. And it was just really wonderful. Then the bell rang, and Mrs. King came in, the impresario arrived, and we were all, of course, in our seats as we'd been trained to be. And she began to patrol the hall. Began to patrol the aisles, as she often did. And she comes down our aisle, and she sees this hand grenade on Cletus's desk. She performed a miracle. She levitated, did a pivot 180 degrees, and left the room immediately, leaving us all to explode. Well, 2 minutes later, she came back with Mrs. Moore, someone I'll talk about in another story. Our principal, short woman, always wore a purple dress, as I recall. Who took charge, as she always did. It turns out the hand grenade was a practice grenade. Cletus's brother had been at Fort Benning and in training, and I don't know if they were like giving these away or he stole it or whatever. Giving it to his younger brother, you know, for a giggle. And I just remember it was like, well, it was mustard yellow, but it's actually army green, but they've been painted mustard yellow for some reason, and some of the paint was off. It was a tremendous object. And it was a dud, of course, for practice. Mrs. King acted that way almost all the time, as if there was a loaded grenade in the room. I don't think that special moment helped. She was a troubled woman, and yet, was working hard. Like, for example, in the first day of school, maybe it was the second day, she had, over the summer, had figured out that we wasted a lot of time raising hands and her calling on us, what do you want to do? And they said, I want to do this. And she would have to decide what it was. And then maybe yes, maybe no. So she'd come up with a hand signal to, quote, save time in our precious day in the 4th grade in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And it went kind of like this. Well, it went exactly like this because we all remember it very well. You raised one finger if you wanted to go to the bathroom. You raised 2 fingers if you wanted to speak with another student. You raised 3 fingers if you wanted to sharpen your pencil. 4 fingers if you wanted to throw something into the waste paper basket. And 5 fingers if you wanted to speak with Mrs. King personally. We couldn't seem to get it right. She had to go over and over again. People would raise their hands and she'd say, yes, you can sharpen your pencil. The kid would say, no, I need to go to the bathroom. Okay, so let's go over the system again. Number 1, number 2, okay. I don't know. Maybe we just did it to play with her. I don't know, to stay away from subject matter. That maybe we deliberately acted confused. That part I suppressed. But one day, Regina, who sat against the wall, who was one of those loners, never, she didn't eat with any of the other girls on the playground. She just kind of stood over under a tree. She never spoke in class. And I heard the teacher go, no. And I looked over, and Regina was just pulling her hand down with 2 fingers up. Okay. So we were like, that's curious. But anyway, a few minutes later, Mrs. King goes, I said no. And we look over, and Regina has 2 fingers up, and she's pulling them down again. And we're like, what's up here? Regina doesn't talk to anybody. Why did she ask for permission to talk with someone? So now we're watching, and she's getting red. And then she raises her hand again, 2 fingers again. And Mrs. King said, I said no, Regina. And at that moment, Regina's face got redder, and she lost control of her bowels. Well, of course, it was awful. We felt incredible sympathy for Regina. Another part of me went, that'll show her, speaking about Mrs. King. What happened was that kids have their own signal system. When we talk about, the bathroom is a big topic with kids. We've probably all forgotten about that. But when we talked about number 1, number 2, number 1 was something that boys could do standing up and girls couldn't. And number 2 was something we all had to sit down to do in the bathroom. And Regina either hadn't been paying attention or had forgotten, or maybe a sense of urgency. She blanked out. But her number 2 was not the same in her mind or bowels as was in Mrs. King's mind. So part of us or some of us, I should say, felt jealous that Regina got to go home for the day legitimately to get clean clothes and to get some help to come back later and on another day. But there's a message in all of this, that there's several that you could tease out. But I think the hand grenade in a classroom is symbolic of a lot of things, and it brought out the worst in Mrs. King. And today I look back and I feel sorry for her, compassionate, because school is full of teachers who have to maintain a certain set of standards or disciplinary regulations, filled with kids who are Pez dispensers constantly, having needs that need to be met, urges, desires, goals, dreams, initiatives, wants, and the teacher has to contain all of that all day, every day, 180 plus days a year, in every school, in every city in our country. It's an interesting dynamic that we have set up. We've made this happen by forcing kids into their seats who normally ran around at home, didn't need permission to go to the bathroom. We were just happy they just went, hey. So we've set that up. And it sets everybody up, the teachers, the kids. It's also interesting that a hand grenade can get you so much more excited than English. What does that say to us? Perhaps it's novelty. Perhaps it's just the potential in a hand grenade as opposed to potential in a participle. The signal system, coming up with ideas that will make things better, only they wind up making things more complicated than they need to be. And the needs of kids being forced into a standardized formula. And we get proof over and over again that it doesn't work, that children, just like adults, are individuals with individual differences, that an astute teacher takes into consideration and balances that thing called, these are the things we do in a classroom ordinarily, and these are the things that individuals sometimes have needs that need to be met in different ways. So I'm fascinated with the dynamics that we set up. It's like, okay, if we put a cat in a box and we put a bat in a box, what will happen? Well, we know something's going to happen. Okay? So we put a teacher in a box and we put 25 to 30 kids in a box. And by the way, it was in Alabama. It was in September. It was hot. And we didn't have air conditioning. So you add those factors in. You create problems that have nothing to do with content. Not a thing to do with spelling, reading, writing, arithmetic. Something to think about. Thanks.